Okay. Yeah, so before I introduce tonight's speaker, I'd first like to acknowledge that the Living Prairie Museum and the city of Winnipeg is located on Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe or Ojibwe, the Innu Cree, and the Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water also comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. So yeah, with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker for this evening, Jaime Manness, founder of Hike Manitoba, whose vision is to encourage and empower folks of all ages to venture out and explore our province in an environmentally conscious way. So Jaime can trace her love of the outdoors back to her childhood, and she's been hiking seriously as an adult for over a dozen years now. So Jaime works as a registered nurse and nursing instructor at Red River College, and she's found hiking to be one of the best ways to help alleviate the stresses of her job. So she started Hike Manitoba to share her knowledge and to emphasize the mental and physical benefits of getting out into nature. She's authored a series of books and trail guides on both summer and winter hiking in Manitoba, including a children's hiking guide and a cookbook for backcountry meals. Today, Jaime is going to share some winter hiking safety tips for both people and your pets, and some of the top trails to explore in winter. So I thought it's a good fitting topic for cold January. So hello, Jaime. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
And please go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming to listen tonight. And thank you to the Living Prairie Museum for having me. I'm super excited to talk about winter hiking because winter hiking, it turns out, is my favorite time to hike. I always joke that there's no bears, no booters, and no bugs. It's a little bit cold, but winter is so beautiful in Manitoba, and we're stuck with it for 6 months. So you can either wait for it to pass or you can embrace it and get outside. So a little bit of a backstory about Hike Manitoba is, pardon me, there we go. So I'm the founder of Hike Manitoba, and it has a bit of a story about how it all began almost by accident. So I hiked a lot as a child, most of our vacations as far back as I can remember, and into my teens were camping and hiking. Now that I'm a little bit older, I see that maybe my parents didn't have as much resources as other families, but they made for really amazing vacations. And we were always out exploring. And I just remembered how much I loved hiking with them. We would be out first thing in the morning, coming back at sunset. We'd have a campfire, and dinner never tasted so good as after a day on the trails. And it was a really restful sleep after that. I just remember falling asleep under the stars. We were always in a tent. Fast forward a few years, I quit hiking so I could go to school. I kind of thought I was too cool to hike, and I left it. I started in nursing school when I was in my early 20s, and it was not what I thought it would be. It was much more challenging than I anticipated. When I graduated nursing school, it was not like it is right now. There were very few jobs, and HSC Emergency was one of the only places that was hiring. And at that time, new grads were still a new concept in emergency. And so it was a very challenging learning curve for myself as a new grad in such a challenging environment. And then also for the staff that worked there, it was challenging to have new grads. They were used to working with nurses that had some experience. So the difficulty of being a new grad in that workplace, coupled with a little bit of interdepartmental bullying and some vicarious trauma from the things that I was seeing that I had no idea I would see as a nurse, I really started to struggle with my well-being. I was very stressed out and wasn't sleeping. And one day I thought, well, it's either I got to quit nursing or I have to think of something. So I just out of the blue thought back to my childhood and how much I loved hiking. And so I Googled a trail in Winnipeg, or in Birds Hill, sorry, and I put on some runners. I filled my backpack with nothing but snacks, and I headed out onto the trail. And it was on the trail that I found what I was looking for. So it took me back to a time that I remember being very happy, and I started making these new memories. I started making friends with people that like to hike, and I started just bringing together kind of I reshaped what my life looked like. And now my work wasn't the only thing I was about, I was also hiking. And in 2014, I started volunteering for Trails Manitoba. I was running their social media and I loved it. It was neat. Everyone would send me messages asking for trail suggestions, and I loved giving that advice. And so I had a lot of fun with it. And when I started dating my now husband, I jokingly said to him that I should write a book about hiking trails in Manitoba because I was always getting asked for suggestions. And he said, that's a really good idea. You should do that. And he stuck with it. He would bring it up every few months, and then it was every month, and then every couple of weeks. And I finally wrote the book so that he would just stop asking about it. And it happened to launch in June of 2020. So a little bit of a captive audience with Manitobans not being able to leave the province during the pandemic. So I attribute that to the success of Hike Manitoba. But here we are today. And so I'm really excited to present to you some leave no trace tips and how to be a conscientious hiker, and some ways to prepare for hiking in the winter. It's a little bit different, and so we'll cover a couple of those things. So leave no trace in the winter, very similar to leave no trace, to which I'm a proud partner. The very basic concept of leave no trace is leave what you find, take only photos, leave only footprints, and it's very pared down. But leave no trace also covers how to be a responsible hiker, which includes safety tips. So planning ahead and preparing for your vacation or your hike is super important, because especially in winter when weather can change quite quickly, let someone know where you're going and when to expect you back. So we always I check in with my in-laws. I know that they're home and I know what their schedule is. So I just let them know, hey, we're heading out onto a trail. We're going into the Whiteshell. These are the two trails that we're looking at. We should be off the trail by 4:30. If you don't hear from us, we might be in trouble. And I tell you, at 4:31, if we haven't checked in, they check in with us. So the 2 times I've forgotten, I won't forget again. Monitor the conditions the night before you go, the days leading up, and again in the morning. Winter in Manitoba can change very quickly, and I think we've seen that, where the forecast calls for clear, and then all of a sudden we have blowing snow the next morning. I always recommend in the winter to travel with others in another vehicle if you can. So we often go out 2 vehicles with bigger groups in the winter. And that's so if somebody does have car trouble or there's any issues with any injuries or anything, we have alternate transportation. And one of the big ones is learning to use a map and a compass, or learning how to navigate on land rather than following the footsteps in the snow. I've been on trails that are clear, and we've snowshoed out in these beautiful snow-packed trails. You don't even need to look out from the trail because it's so well packed. And on the way back with the blowing snow, there's no trail, completely covered over. And so know how to identify either the trail signage or be able to use a map and a compass. We'll talk a bit more about planning later on. So travel on the trail. So staying on the trail is so important because when you travel off the trail, the trail is packed. It's a safe route. If you're traveling near waterways or any frozen over water, it may not be frozen completely. We've had some deep freezes through earlier this winter, and people still fell through some areas that were a little bit marshy, and that can be fairly dangerous. Also, when you're traveling on the middle of the trail, you're not causing any additional damage to the trail when spring melt starts. And that's how, if you're ever on a trail and you see those really wide trails that are super mucky, that's because folks have decided to skirt the trail and they've widened the trail and ruined the bottom of the trail, and it will never really recover from that. It will always be that boggy mud. So stay on the trail. You might get dirty feet, but at least you're preserving the area. Pack out your trash. So I think the one thing that I noticed with the increased volume on the trails during the pandemic was that I don't think it's intentional, but I'm not sure that folks knew that they were expected to take everything with them. And so we saw tons of trash just kind of tossed into the woods. We saw a lot of wipes kind of used and left around the parking lot and in the woods. So pack out what you pack in. If it fit in your pack on the way out onto the trail, I assure you it will fit on your way back to your car. And if you are accessing the trails in the winter, we actually are, we try to take all of our trash with us back to the city because parks employees are a little bit overextended right now, and they can't always empty the bins as much as they would like. So we just take our trash just back to the city. If you're pooping in the snow, what you need to know is you need to go far off the trail. Just be safe and make sure you're not near water. You need to bury it deep in the snow and then mark it so that others can avoid the area. We did see a lot of poop, human poop on the trail at Pine Point. And it was kind of covered with wipes, and it was quite unsightly, but it's also really unsafe for any other users in the area. If you're using toilet paper and wipes, you got to take those with you. So I can get into that, but I can also, if anyone wants to know more about how to dispose of waste properly, I can certainly send out a quick email. If you just give me a little nudge, I'll happily send that out to you. And if you are making snow shelters or anything of the sort, make sure before you leave them that you dismantle them. And so leaving what you find, super simple. Unless it's garbage, take it with you. But otherwise, leave things as you found them. So we also saw a lot of graffiti added to a lot of structures in the past couple of years. And again, I don't think people intentionally go out to cause harm, but they just don't know the impacts of that kind of behavior. So leave things as you found them or better. Minimizing campfire impacts. Open fires are actually prohibited in Manitoba parks and national parks. So make sure you're using a provided fire ring or fire pit. They're the metal boxes in provincial parks. And before you move on, even in the winter, you need to make sure that fire is completely out. So respecting wildlife. I'm just going to put this out there. What's wrong with this photo? We see this a lot. Birds Hill is a really popular spot for this. We see this on Chickadee Trail. Everyone is out feeding the chickadees. And Birds Hill staff have really tried hard to prevent this behavior. Winter is an especially vulnerable time for wildlife. Food sources are scarce. This creates a dependency in the wildlife on humans, and that creates a problem that goes through the seasons. So we try to encourage people not to feed wildlife, even the birds, and to make sure your food is properly stored, and that when you do put things in the trash, that it's properly binned and sealed. And the last one is to be considerate of your fellow users. In the wintertime, cross-country skiers have a very, very short season, and there are volunteers across the province that are going out to groom those beautiful ribbon tracks. And when hikers come across them, you don't realize the impact that one hiker can have, but if you have a dozen hikers that go across that trail and ruin those groomed ribbons, it makes it less pleasant to ski and can be unsafe on hills. So who has the right of way? This is changes, but in the winter, fat bikes yield to hikers and snowshoers. Everyone yields to cross-country skiers. And if you're headed downhill and you're fast moving, you have the right of way. When you're stopped on skis, snowshoes, fat bikes, on foot, move off the trail for safety of yourself and others. And then to follow all posted rules about pets on trails. So all trails in Manitoba parks and national parks are, they all have leash laws. Some of the parks have off-leash beaches, but aside from that, there are no off-leash trails. And so there is an expectation that you keep your pet leashed. Just a side note is that hunting is allowed in provincial parks in the spring and the fall. And so if you are taking your pet and on the trail with you, a good idea is to put the pet in some kind of bright colored garb. You can get little reflector vests for your pets, something like that. Okay, so we're going to circle back to being prepared before heading out on an adventure. So I'm going to share a story that will not paint me in a great picture, but I think it's a really important story. I wanted to hike Hogsback Trail for the longest time, and I finally figured out how to get to Hogsback Trail in Spruce Woods. It's a 1 kilometer trail, and that seems like it wouldn't be worth it, but it's a really beautiful 1 kilometer trail. It was early spring, late winter of 2022, and I foolishly thought my car was a little bit more capable than it was. And I had done everything right. I let everyone know we were going to hike Hogsback. I let everyone know what the route we were taking would be, and I let everyone know when to expect us back. We got onto the road out to Hogsback. They call it a turkey trail, and it's a very narrow little dirt road. And in the summer, it's super fun. In the spring, quite muddy and quite snowy still. So we got stuck, and it wasn't such a big deal. I had CAA lined up, and I called CAA and I said, hey, we're out. This is our location. And I gave them the crossroads, and I said, we're kind of 2 miles up that turkey trail. And they said, okay, not a problem. You're calling from Spruce Woods. And I said, yes. And I thought we had it until the tow truck driver called and said, hi, I'm at 200 Salto Crescent. You're not here. And I realized that when you Google Spruce Woods Provincial Park, that was the address that came up. And so all of my preparation in recording my location and everything that I had done to prepare if I got stuck or lost was out the window. So we called the RCMP and we said, we just need a little hand. We have very limited cell service out here, and we can't Google anything, and we can't seem to get anyone on the phone. Could you just help us find a tow company in the area? So we were put through to 3 different tow companies, and finally one fellow named Boo from a small town nearby, he knew exactly where we were, and he came out and he was there within an hour. So we spent about 3 hours on the trail trying to get ourselves sorted. And my friend that I was with, she was a little bit anxious, but I was like, I have everything we need for this. I have an emergency kit in the car. We have our backpacks that have all the gear we need. We have a full tank of gas. We're going to be okay. And so I was prepared for that as best as I could. It still didn't end as well as I hoped it would. But I just think that had I not had CAA or cell service or prepared properly, that could have ended with me spending the night in the woods and having to hike out first thing the next morning, several miles to the nearest house. So being prepared ahead of time, letting somebody know where you are, and having the right gear in your car can make a huge difference in the overall outcome for folks on the trail. So before you go, check Manitoba Parks and Parks Canada. Both of them do trail updates. Parks Canada is really diligent in updating trail conditions. So I would always suggest, if you're heading out, just check your trail conditions the morning of. Things can change overnight. You can also call the park that you're headed to and just say, hey, we're going to hike Pine Point today. Do you have a recent update on the trail? And they can give you a pretty decent and recent-ish report. You can call, you can look at Manitoba 511 and you can check out the road conditions. The app is amazing and it has real-time updates to the road conditions. You can always message me. I have a constant feed of people that are giving me trail updates. I hiked these trails in the Whiteshell on Saturday, they were great, they weren't great, that kind of stuff. All Trails is a paid app if you want access to all the features. It's a good app. It has good value. Make yourself familiar with the comment section, because that's where you're going to find a lot of active users that are going to list when they last visited and what the trail was like. So you might just get boring trail, and that might be their review, or you might get like, downed trees, some muddy sections, overall decent condition. So it's not without its faults, I guess, is that anyone can say anything they want in the caption or in the comments, but it's a decent tool. And Facebook groups. So there's, I think Hiking Manitoba is one of the bigger Facebook groups, and you can go in there and say, hey, I'm hiking in the Whiteshell. Give me your top 3 trails if you know what condition they're in, that kind of good stuff. And that should help prepare you before you head out. Now, again, I'm stressing, let somebody know where you are going and when to expect you back. Be prepared to change your plans, have a backup. We always have a backup trail in the winter. And we've gone as far as a couple miles from the trailhead, and and then we either get an update of the trail, or the road out just suddenly changes and we have to kind of reroute ourselves. So have a backup trail kind of in your back pocket, so you can just change your plans and it doesn't affect you too badly. Increase your calories on the trail. Everything in winter takes longer. Everything. So getting anything out of your pack, you've got to take your mittens off. You've got to dig through your pack. You've got to warm your hands. You have to dig through your pack some more. Everything just takes longer. So walking through snow, snowshoeing, all of that stuff takes more energy. So increase your calories. Something that I recommend is easy to eat snacks. In the summer, we'll go pretty gourmet. We'll bring our little stove out. We'll cook food on the trail. We'll stop and make little charcuterie spreads on the trail. But in the winter, we are carrying trail mix energy bars. Cranked Energy is actually one of my favorites for the winter because it needs to stay refrigerated. And so it does really well in a pack or in your pocket. And sandwiches. We have a lot of sandwiches on the trail. Getting kind of bored of sandwiches already at this point in the winter, but if you're creative, you can make some pretty good ones. And have an emergency kit for your vehicle. So in my emergency kit, I have an extra set of winter clothes for my husband and I. I have an extra little, I think they're called pocket rocket camp stoves. They just fold down. We have a couple ready to eat meals, and we have some dog food for our dog. We have an extra blanket and some hot packs and a few other things that are necessary. Jumper cables, a little shovel, cat litter, kind of things. Would have been nice if I had that last year. A couple little things that might make it so that if we do get stuck in our vehicle overnight, we're a little bit more comfortable, or things that we've actually offered to other people in the past when they've come off the trail and they look like they're struggling. So an extra meal or a couple granola bars, that kind of stuff. So we do have an emergency kit in our vehicle at all times. We just changed it over with the season. So our winter one looks a little bit different. We have an extra bag of clothing and layers. It's also nice when I fell through a beaver dam in -10 and went into the water up to my waist with my backpack on for backpacking. When I got back to my car, I could switch into dry pants and socks. So not the worst thing to have in your car. Now, winter specific gear. You don't have to change a lot, but there are things that you can change that will make your experience on the trail just a little bit nicer. So we don't use our aqua packs for in the winter. So those are your little like your bladder with the little hose. I have a cozy for the hose and insulator. I find that it doesn't work well And I spend more time trying to like break up the ice in the hose, and I'm not drinking enough water. So the tubing will freeze. I've been there, and it's unpleasant because then you have no access to water unless you're opening up a bag. And so we always warm our thermos before adding our liquids to it. So boiling water into the thermos first will keep it going for that much longer, keep it hotter on the trail. So extra socks and hand warmers. Those little disposable hand warmers last longer than the reusable ones. The reusable ones are obviously more responsible and environmentally friendly, but the little disposable ones that you can get at Costco in the big box, super great. We always have extras in our pack. We came upon a family at Pine Point last year. It was so cold. It was -26, I think. I don't think there was any wind, but I think it was -26. And the family had been out hiking, and they were wearing just those little magic gloves, those little stretchy gloves, and no toques. And one was wearing runners, and a few were wearing just very flimsy. One was wearing rubber boots, and they were very cold. So we were able to give them our hot packs, and we made them a little bit of tea, and we didn't have much more to offer them, but hand warmers are a great thing to have on you. And if you are cold and you throw them in your mitts, you can really change the course of your hike. If your hands warm up a little bit, everything just seems to feel better out there. Crampons, highly recommend crampons if you're going to hike Hunt Lake anytime in the late winter to early spring. Hunt Lake Trail is one of the most challenging trails in the province. It's very well traveled all year. So in the winter, the snow gets packed, and because it's so shaded in the woods, it doesn't thaw quickly and it turns to ice. And so if you've got crampons, I strongly encourage you having them in your backpack, and that way if you need them, they're there. I picked mine up at Wilderness Supply, and they've actually been a lot of fun, because when it was icy here the last couple snowstorms that we had in the rainstorms, I guess, in the fall, I can still cruise around the city fairly easily. And the most important thing is daytime in Manitoba in the winter is very, very short. We have just a very small window of daylight. And so we usually leave the city in the dark, and we're at the trailhead by 9, and we try to be off the trail by 1. And that way, if anything goes wrong, we have a couple hours of a buffer. So have a headlamp and extra batteries if you're taking nothing with you except for one piece of equipment, let it be a headlamp and extra batteries. If you're out on the trail in the winter, in the dark, your cell phone flashlight will last for less than 15 minutes because your phone will get cold and it'll drain your battery very quickly. And it just straight up is not a good time trying to hike out in the snow in the dark. So headlamp, extra batteries. Again, I got mine at Wilderness Supply. You can find them everywhere, Amazon, but just read the reviews and have a headlamp or flashlight, but just something that is tolerant of cold weather. Okay, and now I think this is what we're all super excited about is these aren't the top 5 winter trails in Manitoba, but they're my top 5 winter trails in Manitoba. And I kind of picked them based on a couple things. I picked trails that I find to be interesting in the winter months or fun to hike. And so they might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I really like them. So first up is Bear Lake Trail. It is and will always be my favorite trail in the province. If anybody is familiar with Bear Lake, it has been closed for almost 2 years. It was reopened in late fall, I believe. The beginning of the trail was all marshy, and there was no way to get through without getting a booter or up to the knee kind of in swamp water. So they've put in this beautiful new boardwalk. And it's absolutely it's the best upgrade to a trail I've seen in a long time. It's made it really enjoyable. So Bear Lake is in Whiteshell Provincial Park. It is approximately 6 kilometers out and back. And I would say it's moderate all year. In the winter, it's almost a little bit easier. The trail markers are easier to see in the winter because the trees are bare and you can see the signposts a little bit better. And while I don't encourage people to follow other people's footsteps, because the trail is so well trodden, it's very easy to follow the people that have come before you. So in the winter, it's a hike or snowshoe trail. And just a note, it has very poor cellular service. So why I love this trail is that for 3 kilometers, you hike out towards Bear Lake. At the end of the trail, right before the turnaround, you have to kind of descend this rock face. There's a rope. It's not the easiest, but it's a lot of fun. And then you walk kind of down along by their lake, and then you come up over another rock where you have to kind of pull yourself up on a rope. And then you'll get to a little peninsula and there's a fire pit, and it is one of the prettiest places in the province, in my humble opinion. There's no boat access to Bear Lake, so it's a very peaceful lake, and in the winter it's quite quiet, but in the summer too, there's no boat access, so it's very peaceful out there. You could probably hike in, I've seen people portage a canoe into the lake, and you could probably hike in a paddleboard if you were so inclined, but it's a beautiful lake and it's quite pristine. So what makes Bear Lake so incredible is that even though you hiked out to the lake those 3 kilometers and it was just absolutely gorgeous, and it's kind of over rocky outcrops and through the woods, when you hike back again, it seems like it's a brand new trail. Completely different. Same trail, same route, but it feels completely different. So for that reason, every season of the year, Bear Lake Trail is my favorite.
I just wanted to chime in. Ashlyn says that the rope was extremely sketchy in December and was missing chunks. Many people mentioned bringing a new one next time, so hoping it's been replaced.
Yeah, so I didn't want to throw too much shade on Manitoba Parks because they had the trail closed for 2 years, and we really hoped to see some upgrades. Right before the pandemic hit, they had installed this beautiful rope and wood ladder to get back up onto the rock, and then a new rope heading down the first descent. And a trail user used the rope ladder as firewood in the fire pit, and so it lasted under a few weeks. We were there, it was not there. We came back weeks later, it was there, and then we were back taking some out of town friends and it was gone already. So you're not wrong, Ashlyn, that rope is so sketchy. And we had rope with us and we thought about it, but I don't want to secure a rope improperly and then have somebody become injured because I haven't tied off the knots correctly. So I've been tapping Manitoba Parks, giving them little nudges, asking them for a little bit of support on that area, because the rope is an adventure on its own. Pine Point Rapids. This guy in Whiteshell Park, our Whiteshell Provincial Park also. This is a 5 to 8 kilometer figure 8 trail. It's easy to moderate hike, snowshoe, cross country ski, fat bike, however you want to get to the rapids. And why it makes my list is because I don't know if there's anything quite as nice as hearing open water in the dead of winter in Manitoba, because there are a few places you can hear open water, and I believe it's a fact that open water can actually decrease stress, and so humans are encouraged to be near water. So the benefit of this trail is it's accessible to most people. If you're heading out and you have a family and you have a toboggan, or in warmer months, you have a little wagon or a off-road stroller, you can take the easier route straight through. It's a groomed ski trail in the winter, and so it's pretty easy to get out there. In the winter months, it's a shared groomed ski trail, so hikers on one side, cross-country skiers. And then the trail itself, if you do take the more challenging side of the trail, it's quite pretty. It's all through the rocky outcrops and the boreal forest, so quite pretty. And there's a really neat little boardwalk through there. And when you come out at the rapids, there's a warming hut, there's a few fire pits, there's a washroom, there's a caged garbage bin. Parks used to stock the wood. There was a wood pile that they used to stock, and they don't anymore. So if you are heading out to the warming shelter to have a fire, you have to bring your own wood. But it's a really neat trail. I think it's one of Manitoba's more popular trails. They did some upgrades to it recently, increased the parking space and just fixed up the washrooms and the signage a bit. This one though, still be really cautious if you're heading out. The signage is still a little bit patchy, and so if you don't see a trail marker, just stop, kind of look around, and if you kind of look further off into the distance, you'll probably catch one there. Liberia Park Loop, just off Waverly, just outside the city. It's an easy trail. There's good parking, there's great washrooms, there's cross-country ski trails, snowshoe area. It's a really neat place to be in the winter. It's an easy loop. It leads through the woods, and it's just a favorite of mine. It's a place that we went a lot when we were kids. Our family spent a lot of time there. But it's nice that it's so close to the city, and if you just need to get out of the city for a moment and into the woods, it's right there. And for that, it makes my list. I know it's not an exciting one. Prairie Winds Trail. So I don't know if anyone's ever gone on this trail. It used to be a white-tailed deer trail. It's in Birds Hill Provincial Park. It's about a 2-kilometer loop. It's very family friendly. It is a snowshoe or hiking trail in the winter. It's easy. And why I love this one is it's short enough to the lookout that you can kind of stay out there for sunset. There's a lot of deer that hang out in the field kind of around the overlook. There's a structure where you can go and view the deer. So it's really neat to be there at sunrise and sunset. And it's a short enough trail that if you are there for sunset, you can hustle back to the car before dark. It also is directly across the road in Birds Hill from Pine Ridge Hollow. So we have made many a trip out there. We've hiked a few trails, finished off at Prairie Winds, and then headed over to Pine Ridge Hollow for a little visit there. Prairie Winds is home to, there's a lot of deer that live right kind of in the woods, and a lot of chickadees. So also, if you're in Birds Hill Park, Cedar Bog is another one of my favorite little trails. And if you're heading out to Rocky Mountain National Park, Brule Trail in the winter is a lot of fun. It's easy. It's pretty. There's some kind of gentle rolling hills. It's about 4.2 kilometers. It's a figure-8 loop. You can do short loop or you can do long. And it heads out to Kinoseo Lake and connects with that trail. But there's a neat little boardwalk kind of bridge over the marsh. It's very pretty though in the winter. It somehow always seems to have hoarfrost on that trail, so it's very, very pretty. And it's one of the easier trails out there in the winter months. So those are my top 5. I'm hoping you folks will have a lot of questions for me, because here we are, we're at questions.
Yeah, well, thanks, Jamie, for sharing those. I've been on all those trails except for Brule. I never actually heard about that one before. Yeah, if anyone has any questions for Jamie, just type them into the chat. Or perhaps maybe just let us know what your favorite winter hiking trail is.
Yes.
Connie says, thank you. Excellent information and review. Which one do you recommend the most for beginners with a dog?
Ooh, I love hiking with my dog, and so I can talk about this all day long. I would say so hiking with a dog, dogs are they're pretty tough, but they also, most dogs will go where you ask them. And so I learned this the hard way with my dog. I took him hiking. I took him on a few trails. He never seemed to tire out, so I thought he was fine to go where I went. And so I took him on Hunt Lake Trail, and we had to carry him back to the car. He actually made himself a little nest in the snow, and we had to carry him back. So if you're heading out with your dog and you want to start hiking, the best thing that I can suggest is to choose trails that, easier, slower paced trails. So Birds Hill Park is a great place to start. I would stay away from Beaudry in the winter. Most of those are ski trails. Le Barrier is great. Assiniboine Park has some really great trails, and kind of start slow. And just like as if you're getting new gear and you're kind of breaking it in and testing it slowly, I would also recommend doing that if you have a new harness or a backpack for your dog, is to kind of break them in slowly to that. I have a dog who's solid but smaller, and so nothing really fits him off the rack. And so I had to get him a custom made harness, because the one that I bought him immediately before that fit him perfectly. No rubbing areas, nothing. We tested it out. He went swimming in it and it stretched a little bit and it rubbed his little armpits raw. And so just if you are going out with your dog and you have boots or a harness or a coat, just give it a test run at home or in your neighborhood first.
Okay. The next question we have is from Dee. What type of compass do you use?
I'm actually still learning how to use a compass. I'm still learning how to navigate. I have always been directionally challenged, and so I'm pretty okay with a map, but I took a course at Mountain Equipment Co-op, and Wilderness Supply should have, they should have a course running again in the spring. And so I've just been using the ones in the course for now until I become a little bit better at it.
Yeah, I'll just jump ahead to a question from Tara, who is asking, where can I seek training for compass and map usage?
Yeah, so that should be offered at Wilderness Supply. And I just know a lot about Wilderness Supply. I put a lot of support behind local businesses, but the folks at Wilderness Supply are also experts in the outdoor space. They all have a passion in the outdoors, and so when you go in to speak with them, they're a group that knows what they're telling you. And so I keep saying about Wilderness, but I do believe Mountain Equipment will also have courses, and usually their Mountain Equipments are free. Wilderness Supplies and their Mountain Equipment are shorter. Wilderness Supply are more like a couple-hour workshop, and they do have a fee.
Okay, and Ashlyn was asking, which trail did you go on that first time back in the woods? I guess after that hiatus from hiking, and did you end up having enough snacks?
I went on Chickadee Trail and didn't realize it was a ski trail. I'm a cautionary tale. If you want to know what not to do, just ask me about the things that I've done wrong. I went on Chickadee Trail in the winter, and it's a ski trail, and I didn't realize that meant I couldn't also use it. I just thought if I stayed between the ribbons, that would be fine. And I had enough snacks I don't remember eating them because I was a little bit stressed out because I did get chased off the trail. And then I kind of started reading up a little bit more about where I should be. And that's kind of where I learned about proper etiquette on trails. Also, yelling at hikers and chasing them around with ski poles, not so friendly. And that was also where I kind of started my learning on what I should have had in my backpack. I was curious about what I should be carrying with me. So.
Okay, and Robin said Bois d'Esprit and Royalwood area is great in the winter.
It's so pretty. I just shared I'm not sure if anyone follows me on Instagram, but I just shared Natalie Bell, Peg City Lovely. She was just out in Bois d'Esprit and she saw an owl and a deer in one hike. And it's the prettiest little spot in the city. It's hard to believe that you're right in the middle of the city.
Yeah, I love that area. It might have the densest herd of deer that I've seen in the city. Lisa asks, have you hiked a fair amount in the Pembina Hills or which hikes would you recommend there?
I think in Pembina Valley Provincial Park, I can't remember the name, but it's the Perimeter Trail. We've done that one a few times, and I was out of commission a bit for the year, but I did get out with my boot cast out into Pembina Valley. I haven't been in the winter. I would strongly caution if you are visiting Pembina Valley, if you're not okay with wood ticks, I would not go during wood tick season, because when we did go in the spring, I've never seen so many wood ticks before. So, but that one trail is amazing. It's very challenging, but I haven't been out in the winter, and I think that one would be a lot of fun on snowshoe.
And the ticks are real. The first time I tried hiking the Ontario Trail, I stopped counting at about 120 ticks. Pull it off myself. Yeah, it was a rough time.
Yeah, it's
so Sydney asked, they're planning on doing the 41-kilometer Epinette Trail at Spruce Woods. Do you have any advice for that one?
On ski or snowshoe?
I'm guessing hiking. I'm not sure. Maybe Sydney, you could clarify. Are you hiking or skiing that trail? I guess that's the Epinette Creek. Oh yeah, hiking.
I think if you're doing the 41K and if you're staying at the cabin overnight, I think it's a doable challenge, but it's going to be a challenge. The only thing I recommend is making sure you do a good dry run of your gear before you head out, because in winter everything is much more challenging, and so just making sure you're comfortable with your gear. I went hiking with somebody who pulled their tent out of the plastic when they set their tent up on the Ontario. They were like, brand new tent. They didn't have poles for it, so the poles weren't in the bag. So just, doing a gear check before you go, making sure you're comfortable with everything that you've got, and then overpacking a little bit when it comes to what you need for food and water.
Well, that would be shocking to be halfway down the Ontario with no tent poles. You'd have to improvise. Someone asks, how do you know to hike or snowshoe? Which is best?
I would say we hike 95% of the time. We'll snowshoe for fun. But for the most part, unless you're one of the first people out on the trails get packed down really quickly. And so we hike. We'll purposely find places that are very low traffic trails so that we can go snowshoeing. But for the most part, we're out hiking. We did take a group out that went on a trail that had maybe 2 inches of snow, and it was very, very well packed, and they were adamant they were going snowshoeing, and so they snowshoed that whole trail and had a lot of fun. But for the most part, we hike.
Yeah, in my experience, snowshoeing is for going off trail. You're in deep snow, and on trail you don't usually need them. Tracy says, thanks for sharing the Pine Point on Instagram. Did the trail last weekend. Question, who has the right of way on the trail? How do you manage passing when there's ribbons?
So skiers have the right of way. So if you are if you're going to have to jump across, because at Pine Point, you do have to kind of hop. If you're on the hiking side of the beginning of the trail is the wide groomed side for skiing and hiking. And then if you are crossing over and you want to go to the more challenging section of the hike, you do have to hop over the ski trail. The skiers have the right of way. If there are not any skiers near you, unfortunately, a lot of people just can't hop across the two sets of ribbons. And so they do step on them. It happens. We just try to stay off the ribbons as far as walking along them. We saw somebody that was walking along them and they were like having the greatest time. They're like, this is so neat. This is a little trail for me. And they had no idea that they were in a ski trail. And so skiers would have the right of way, but sometimes you have no choice but to cross the ribbons.
Yeah, thanks for the tip though. And earlier when you were explaining the different right of ways, I think that makes a lot of sense and something I'd never really considered.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people just don't know that there's a right of way. And so if you are going downhill, you always have the right of way if you're hiking. And it's because if you're going uphill, you already have your eyes on the trail. You can easily just pause for a moment. But if you're going downhill, you've probably mapped out your next 10 to 12 footsteps, just looking at the descent. And so downhill always has the right of way, which seems counterintuitive. And that's for if you're traveling on foot.
And Sandy is asking, what would you suggest about etiquette for a new hiker?
I think the thing about hiking is that I have yet to meet a hiker that doesn't want to share what they know about hiking, and I've yet to meet somebody who wouldn't want to help somebody out. And so as far as etiquette goes, if you're trying and you have questions, if you ask anybody who posts about hiking and you send them a little message and you say, hey, could you tell me a little bit more about that? That's how I found out a lot about what I was doing as an adult. I just asked a lot of questions. And so Wilderness Supply, they were there for me and I was in there all the time. And I was like, tell me again about this piece of gear, or, tell me again about how I managed this situation. And they really got me through a lot of my challenges as a newer hiker. And there's some really great groups out there that will kind of guide and instruct new hikers, and so to build up some confidence. So those might be something to look into. But
okay, and Casey says, excellent talk, thank you. Any tips for keeping glasses or sunglasses unfogged?
No, and if anyone ever has one, can you send it my way, because
yes.
I'm in a constant state of fog.
Yes, please. One tip I learned is just a ski mask, if it can kind of go over your glasses, or honestly just contacts.
Yeah, it's I can't wear contacts, and so it's just been foggy glasses for my whole life.
Yeah. Carolyn asked, does the ski trail go all the way on Pine Point Trail?
No, so the figure 8 loop, the first half of it is to the rapids, to the warm-up shelter, and the second half of it is just a hiking or snowshoe trail. I have been warned that the stairs on the back loop are very, very icy right now. And somebody called them a death trap, and she's a very, very seasoned hiker. She's like, I don't recommend those right now. So if you are headed out to Pine Point and you're heading out to do the second loop to see Acorn Falls and Viburnum Rapids, I think I got those mixed up, then just be warned that the stairs on the back loop are pretty sketchy.
And then Teresita is asking footwear tips for winter hikes.
So I actually have a pair of winter hikers that I purchased 7 years ago. They're starting to wear out. So the good news about winter hikers is they are the cost of a pair of hiking boots, but I guess the bad news, but the good news is that they've lasted for 7 years and they still look brand new. The only thing that's changing is the insulation is getting a little bit worn out. So I've just been kind of changing the way that I layer up in my boots. So I wear the Columbia, I think it's called the Bugga boot, and end of season sales, you can get them on for a really good price, which is where I picked mine at. And again, 7 years in the same pair of boots, they've been fantastic. You just don't wear boots out the way you do in the winter. Hikers don't wear out quite the same way as all seasons. So a little bit of an investment, but they've been worth it.
Well, I think I missed one a little earlier. Someone was asking, can you comment on the Brandon Hills?
I actually haven't been out to the Brandon Hills yet. That was my plan for this summer, was that I was going to do all the trails through there, and then I promptly broke my ankle in the first weekend of summer. So.
Okay, well, I think that's all the questions. You have a lot of kudos on there, so thanks so much. And
thank you so much.
That answered my question. Thank you for a fun, informative talk. You're so gracious. Thanks, Jamie, for an informative and interesting presentation. I appreciate the many insights you have given us. Lots of thanks in the chat. So yes, thanks, Jamie. We really appreciate you being here. Yeah, on behalf of the museum staff and the friends, can't thank you enough for supporting this event. So for everyone else, the recording for the session will be available to members. The link will be sent out once we have that uploaded. And I'll just mention that our next session is February 7th, where Agathe Moreau will be joining us from Montreal, and we'll speak about a program called Mission Monarch, which is a citizen science initiative where you can help to contribute to prevent the decline of monarch butterflies. And I'll post the link to register in the chat. Yeah, well, again, thank you so much, Jamie. I think this concludes our evening. Lots of thanks in the chat, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.